Alright, problem number 1. A scratch-off lottery ticket has 6 spaces that can be uncovered. 2 of the 6 spaces say win, the other 4 say lose. A player randomly uncovers 2 spaces. If he uncovers both win spaces, he gets a large prize. If he uncovers 1 win and 1 lose, he gets a small prize. What is the probability that he gets a small prize? Alright, well, my hint to you would be to draw a tree and look at all the different possible outcomes that could happen from this scenario. So we know the probability, I think I've said this before if you've watched some of my other videos, the probability is just equal to the number of desired outcomes over the total number of outcomes. Okay? And in this case, the desired outcome that we're looking for is actually the small prize outcome, which is the win-lose combination. Now, you might think that the desired outcome would be the large prize. I don't know what the large prize is, but in this case, since we're looking for the probability of getting a small prize, then the desired outcome is the one that will give us the answer. Because in math, it's all about the answer, right? So in order to get the small prize, we have to get win-lose. So we can either scratch off win in the first scratch and lose in the second, or we can scratch out lose in the first and win in the second. But either way, we'll get the small prize, right? So let's take a look at what those possible outcomes are. Okay, so let's draw a tree. So we have 2 wins and we have 4 loses underneath these scratch-off dots, right? So on our first scratch-off, these are the 6 possible outcomes. We can either get a win, a lose, a lose, lose, lose. Alright, so those are our 6 possible outcomes. So we have 6 possible outcomes here. And then if we scratch off a win, then we've only got 1 win left. So we could get a win, or we could get the other 4 loses, right? So there's only 5 outcomes on the second one, and we could go through each one of these. And again, if we got the other win, then we'd have win, lose, 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 right? It would be 5 outcomes. And then down here, let me draw it on this lose. If we scratched off a lose, we still have 2 wins left, right? So we have win, win, and then we have 3 loses. Okay, but we still have 5 possible outcomes. Okay, so I could draw all those 5 outcomes. I don't have room. If I wanted to complete my tree, I could draw the 5 outcomes on each one of these loses here. But since I don't have enough room, you could see that the total number of outcomes, which is going to be determined by the number of branch endpoints we have here. So we're going to have 6 branches, and each one of those 6 branches has 5 branches off of it. So 6 times 5 is equal to 30, which is the total. Total number of outcomes, right? Okay, so we have 30 possible outcomes. Now, how many of them are either win-lose or lose-win? So in this case, let's take a look at this first branch. So if we scratch off a win in the first scratch, and then we scratch off one of these 4 loses, so we have 4 possible outcomes in this first branch. Let me kind of highlight that. I'll get a highlighter. So if we look at this first branch, we've got 4 possibilities here where we would get the small prize. So we have the win-lose combination. Okay, and the same way with this one. If we scratch off the other win, then there's 4 possible outcomes that would give us the win-lose combination. And if we scratch off a lose first, then we have 2 wins. So we have 2 ways that we could get the lose-win combination. And we'd have the same 2. We've got there's 4 ways to scratch off a lose in the first scratch. Okay, so then for each of those loses on the first scratch, there's going to be 2 ways to scratch off a win in the second scratch. So each one of these is going to have 2, 2, 2, and 2, right? So if we scratch off win first, we have 8 possible ways to get a lose on the second scratch. And if we scratch off a lose first, then we have 8 ways to get a win on the second scratch. Okay, if we scratched off a lose in the first scratch. Okay, so we end up with 16 ways to get a win-lose combination. Okay, so it's either win-lose or lose-win. And so we have a probability of 16 out of 30, which is equal to 8 out of 15. Okay. Now I want to show you a little bit easier way to get this problem. Okay, because this is kind of messy to draw out all these branches. I'm going to draw a simpler diagram. We can either scratch off a win or we can scratch off a lose on the first scratch, right? Now we actually have a 2/6, right? There's 2 win spots out of 6. We have 2/6 chance of scratching off a win, and we have a 4/6 chance of scratching off a lose. Okay, does that make sense? So our probability of scratching off a win in the first scratch is 2/6, and you can see it over here. There's 2 out of 6 possible ways to get a win on the first scratch, and 4 out of 6 possible ways to get a lose on the first scratch. Okay, well, let's just write the probabilities directly, and it kind of simplifies the problem, or at least the diagram. All right, so, and then on the second scratch, if you scratched a win on the first one, we only have 1 win left, so we have 1 out of 5 ways to scratch off another win. We have a 4 out of 5 ways to scratch off a lose. And if we scratched a lose on the first scratch, then we have only 3 loses left, but we still have 2 wins, so 2 out of 5 ways to scratch a win, and we have 3 out of 5 ways to scratch a lose. Okay, and if you look at the probabilities here, if you look here at the here's one desired outcome, okay, where we get a win-lose, and here's the other desired outcome where we get lose-win. All right, and we can actually multiply these probabilities together and look at the probability of getting win first and then lose. Okay, so if we multiply 2 times 4, we get 8, and 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, now I could have reduced this one, or this 2/6 to 1/3, and then we wouldn't have to reduce this down to 4/15. Okay, but that's the probability of getting win first and then lose. And then we also have to take into account the fact that we could scratch lose first and then win. Okay, so 4/6 times 2/5 is again 8/30, which is another 4/15. Okay, and then we can add those 2 cases together. All right, so if we add 4/15 and 4/15, we get 8/15, and we get the same answer that we got before. Okay, so either way, it's 8/15. But it is nice to know that if that you can multiply these probabilities together, and then you can simplify the diagram instead of writing it all out. But I wanted to do this way first so that you can see why this works. Okay, you can see it helps you see why you can multiply those probabilities together to get the answer. Okay, so anyway, that's the 8/15 is your answer.